with it.
White supremacy. White people destroyed Egyptian monuments that looked too black. White people started separating Egypt from Africa as if it was two different places. White people started making Egyptians look white. And then when people started pointing out that Egyptians were in fact African, they started trying to make it seem like the pyramids were built by aliens because they did not want the modern white world to know how advanced the African culture was.
Do you know why they won't teach us the history of Egypt? After you have shackled and enslaved a people, branded, castrated, lynched, burned, and tortured them, you called them 3/5 of a man, subspecies, an ape, a monkey, and a general inferior creation. How can we then admit that they are our teachers and the ones who gave us civilization? How can we admit that we descended from Greece and from Rome, and that Greece and Rome stole everything they knew from Egypt?
Right. Welcome back to my YouTube commentary. Thank you so much for watching the previous episodes. I hope they are great to you now. Welcome to another powerful episode. This one right here is about the uncomfortable truth that the world can no longer hide, okay? And this is that white people are now bowing to black spirituality authority. People are now bowing to black spiritual authority, yes. You heard me right. The same world that tried to destroy African spirituality is now seeking its power. The same world that tried to destroy and erase is now seeking black people rhythm, seeking its energy, seeking its alignment with nature, you know? And this is divine balance with the ancestors. That's what I'm going to talk today, because for a number of years, for centuries, Europe painted Africa as a continent of darkness, okay? They claimed that we needed saving, that our gods were evil, that our drumming, our dancing, our rituals were all things to fear, were dark things to fear, you know? But sometimes strange has happened, or something strange has happened in this world, okay? In this century that we are living in, something strange has happened. In yoga studios, energy retreats, and online, the spiritual workshop, you will find thousands of white faces repeating African chants, burning herbs from the motherland, and seeking ancestral connection through rituals that our people were once punished for. They are now returning to what they destroyed. They are now copying the very thing they once condemned, they once demonized. Okay? And they are beginning to admit that there is something powerful about black spirituality. There is something black spiritual carries. They are saying black spirituality carries a power. And this power the West cannot produce now. Before I continue with this video, I want you to watch these clips here because I'm trying to react on them, but I have my commentary here because we want to talk something about this one. Let's watch and then we come back and talk more.
Did you know that white people used to worship black deities? Negroes were first worshipped in Greece and Rome. White masses bowed down to black deities. The rites of Apollo were founded by Delphos and his Negro mother Melanin, and the worship of black Isis and Horus were popular in Rome and the Roman colonies as far north as Britain. It was actually, in ancient Rome, it was actually common for the Romans to make fun of their own gods, but to worship and respect Horus and Isis, which, by the way, Madonna and Jesus. But we'll get to that, because the worship of black Isis and Horus existed as far north as Britain, but eventually this evolved into the worship of the black Madonna and the black Christ. Christian whites also bowed down to them. Negroes, as was said, were deified in early Greece. They appeared as gods in Greek mythology. The chief title of Zeus, the greatest of the Greek gods, was Ethiopes, which means black. The earliest of gods and messiahs on all continents were black. We have found the black complexion or something relating to it whenever we have approached the origin of nations. The alma mater, the goddess, the founder of the oracles, the Memnon, or the first idols, always black. The pyramids, by the way. The faces on the pyramids, they chipped the noses away so it would be less apparent. They were black too. Thus, the oracles at Dodona and the Apollo at Delphi were founded by the black doves. Orisis and his bull were black. All the Gods and goddesses of Greece were black. At least it was in the case with Jupiter, Bacchus, Hercules, Apollo, Ammon. The goddesses Venus, Isis, Hecate, Juno, Metis, Circe, Sibyl were black. And the first gods in antiquity were black. Zeus, Apollo, Osiris, Isis, Buddha, Horus, they just keep going. In the Bible, the ancient days God was described as having hair like the pure wool. The earliest deities were woolly-haired Negroes. Their peppercorn hair was a sign of divinity. Did you know that the Pope's private chapel has a black Jesus in it?
Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter.
In early Christian art, Jesus is almost invariably represented as black-skinned. The Hebrews were dark-skinned people. His feet were like burnt brass, Revelation. His hair was like wool, Revelation. My skin is black, Job. Our skins were black. They are black, Jeremiah. Look not upon me because I am black, Solomon. Joseph, the Jewish historian, wrote that Christ was a man of simple appearance, mature age, dark skin with little hair. And the earliest statues of the Virgin Mary, they're also black. Everything was stolen from Egypt. Do you know why they won't teach us the history of Egypt? After you have shackled and enslaved a people, branded, castrated, lynched, burned, and tortured them, you called them 3/5 of a man, subspecies, an ape, a monkey, and a general inferior creation. How can we then admit that they are our teachers and the ones who gave us civilization? How can we admit that we descended from Greece and from Rome, and that Greece and Rome stole everything they knew from Egypt? How to admit that? There's no room in a white supremacist psyche for black contributions to civilization or world progress. This reaches too far into the consciousness of the so-called objective white scholars of academia and their black-skinned counterparts. This is like asking a Nazi to accept the Jewish origins of Nazism, and of Hitler, if that were the case. They couldn't accept it if it were true any more than the white supremacists can accept the African origins of civilization, the African origins of Christianity, the African origins of science, the African origins of everything. Philosophy originated in Egypt. Math originated in Egypt. Theology originated in Egypt. Philosophy originated in Egypt. Letters originated in Egypt. Everything started there. They were as ancient to the Romans as the Romans now are to us. And that's what we don't really understand because we live now. We don't really understand that the pyramids are 5,000 years old and that the Romans only date back 2,500 years. Like, really think about that. Because that's the world we live in, a world of lies. I'm reading from J. California Cooper's book, The Wake of the Wind. I am Africa. I am a place. I am a state of mind. Hundreds of years ago, my children lived free. We had our skirmishes within my shores, even small wars that did not disturb my great and sprawling land. We were not perfect, but we never lift our shores to seek to destroy or rob any other culture or people, to steal the fruit of their land or mines and leave the land and people ravaged. Nor did we seek to steal any people's love of themselves, nor tell other people they were ignorant savages and inferior while we were superior, as the white ones said to us. They lied so much and long they began to believe it themselves. They cried God with their mouths while holding a knife in one hand and a gun in the other, slicing and firing at vibrant life. They also brought with them other diseases, including endless greed, envy, and hate. Our nations changed. They killed for land, women, or gold, spreading their savageness to all others. And now they have influenced others. Anathema. Enough. How do we repay our debt to black people? I really want white people to think about that.
White supremacy. White people destroyed Egyptian monuments that looked too black. White people started separating Egypt from Africa as if it was two different places. White people started making Egyptians look white. And then when people started pointing out that Egyptians were in fact African, they started trying to make it seem like the pyramids were built by aliens because they did not want the modern white world to know how advanced the African culture was. Why do you think they targeted Africa for slaves in the first place? This was all about implementing white supremacy. Take a look at what they did to Jesus Christ. That man ain't white, but they made him white and they forced that white Jesus onto people of color, just to further perpetuate the white supremacist agenda.
Did you know that white people used to worship black deities?
Yes, because black people are gods.
Negroes were
Negro is not a word used to describe us.
first worshipped in Greece and Rome. White masses bowed down to black deities. The rites of Apollo were founded by Delphos and his Negro mother Melanin, and the worship of Black Isis and Horus were popular in Rome and the Roman colonies as far north as Britain. It was actually, in ancient Rome, it was actually common for the Romans to make fun of their own gods, but to worship and respect Horus and Isis, which, by the way, Madonna and Jesus. But we'll get to that.
The world is waking up.
We'll be surprised too. Now, what do you call some of your gods you have in Brazil?
I know Shogun, Exu, and Ogum. The people choice. I don't know if the people choice or the god choice the people. I don't know the first of all. But it's more common Exu and Ogum, I think, because I'm in Brazil. I'm living near Salvador. It's I think
Salvador Bahia.
Salvador Bahia.
Okay.
It's the most city of where religions have religions, African religions in Brazil. It's Salvador, and because I'm living there, and it's not that common, but you see everyone use the what the name the
Juju.
juju,
Yeah,
the
okay,
juju.
yeah.
Some and say this is for protection. Yeah, you know?
they have that. Well, anyway, let me ask you, what other word do you call God in Brazil? What other word do you use for God?
Another word for God?
Like
Deus?
Deus? No, okay, like, so with your African people there, what, like, because we have something in Nigeria where a lot of them come from, but we call it Olodumare.
You use only Olodum?
So say that again?
Olodum.
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 No, then, it's the same thing then, because we say Olodumare. So call it again. What's
Olodum.
Olodum?
Yeah.
Okay, wait. You know, have you watched They Don't Care About Us, Michael Jackson? You watch that? You see, like, so that's what they put on the T-shirt, Olodum.
Yeah. It's a band.
It's a band. Okay.
I don't know the name. It's a big instrument.
Talking drum. Talking drum. Yeah, drums.
A lot of guys use these instruments. Does not have a vocal. Only instruments.
Only instruments.
It's very famous.
That's from Nigeria. It's called talking drums. So we've got various kinds. They've got gong. They've got oh my gosh, I forget the rest. Oh my gosh, you have all this in Brazil. Well, it's a pleasure. What's the name? Sorry.
The band?
No, what's your name?
My name is Tiago.
We have a guy in Nigeria called Tiago Ishola. He speaks Lukumi. You have Lukumi in Brazil?
No.
Yoruba?
Yoruba, I listen, but I don't know why. But sometimes I listen Yoruba.
Oh my gosh! You know what Tiago means? Tiago is Yaakov in the Bible.
Yeah.
Welcome back. Now, one thing clear is that before there was any religion, call it Christianity, Islam, or Judaism, there was African spirituality. Okay. From Kemet, the ancient Egypt, to the Yoruba of the West Africa, from the Bantu of Central Africa to the Zulu of South Africans understood something. Africans understood that the universe as a living, breathing organism, Africans spoke to the ancestors because we knew spirit never dies. We honored the earth, we honored the water and the sun because we knew that They were not just elements, but they were divine reflection of the Most High. The world's oldest spiritual texts, the pyramid texts and the coffin texts of Asian Kemet, are African. They speak of resurrection, they speak of judgment, and the eternal soul. Okay? Now, the story of Ausa, Auset, and Heru predates the story of Jesus by thousands of years. That's not coincidence, that is evidence. It's evidence that our ancestors were not lost tribes wandering in darkness, but they were the architects of divine science. It's evidence that our ancestors mapped the stars before Europe learned to navigate the sea. It's evidence that our ancestors understood vibration, energy, healing, and the sacred geometry of life. So the West talks about manifestation or vibration and third eye awakening. They are speaking African truth in European words, but they just don't give credit. Okay? Now, during colonization, African spiritualities was outlawed. Priests were killed, drums were banned, shrines were banned. Our people were forced to kneel before new gods. Okay? Yes, in secret, they kept the flame alive. Okay? So our ancestors never let it die for good. In secret, in the villages, in the forest, in the songs and dances, they put the flame alive that carried the coded message of freedom. So the colonizer didn't understand. And one thing for sure, you cannot colonize the soul. You can enslave the body, but you cannot colonize the spirit of an African remain. The spirit of an African, it's undefeated. Now, in New World right now, many Westerners are profiting from what they once demonized. Okay, they call it holistic wellness. They package African herbs and sell them as organic remedies. They study Ifa. Ifa is from Yoruba. They label it ancient consciousness or consciousness. Sell crystal. They sell cowrie shells and incense. You know, the burning incense, and they make millions. But deep down, they know the truth. They know that none of this works without the African energy behind it. They can initiate the rituals, but they can't copy the power of the rootress. Okay? White people are now publicly exploring African spirituality on YouTube, on TikTok, you know, on spiritual retreats. And you will find white women dressed in dashkis, you know, the clothing, the dashkis, and chanting African mantras and calling themselves energy healers. But behind the fascination is guilt and a silent recognition that something was stolen. So the same people who once say that your ancestors are demons are now asking, how do I connect with my ancestors? The same world that mocked African drumming now uses it for meditation and therapy. They know there is power in that rhythm. You know, they feel it in their bones. It moves something ancient. It moves something no Western philosophy can explain. And this is not imitation anymore. This is subconscious surrender. It is spiritual acknowledgement that the African soul is the original transmitter of divine frequency. Now, there is a reason we call ourselves the root race. Because every race that came after draws from our seeds, okay? Every race that came draws from the seed of black people. Melanin isn't just about color. Melanin, it's a conductor of spiritual and cosmic energy. Okay? Science now shows that melanin absorbs light and sound frequencies, allowing black people to resonate naturally with the nature's vibration. And that's not superstition, that is spiritual physics. When white people meditate, or when white people meditate in African temples, when they listen to African drums, when they dance barefoot on African soil, they feel a connection that they can't describe. So it is not just about tourism. It is not curiosity, but it is a magnetic pull, a pull towards the mother energy that created them all. Okay? So yes, the world is changing. We can feel it. The world is changing and white people are borrowing to black spirits. And they're bowing to the spirits again. Okay? Not because we force them to, but because spirit itself is forcing the truth to surface. Even within Christianity, a quiet revolution is taking place. More white Christians are questioning why their entire faith history traces back to African concepts, traces back to Egypt, to Ethiopia, to Nubia. Why? They are asking why the oldest image of the Madonna and child found in the catacombs of Rome shows them with a black skin. They're asking that question. They're beginning to realize that they didn't invent faith. They inherited it. And those who tried to erase Africa must now return to Africa and rediscover themselves. You can see it in their documentaries. They are writing documentaries. You can see it in their spiritual podcast, in their trips to Ghana. They are going trips to Kenya, trips to Egypt, because they are searching for what they lost. And that search always ends the feet of the black divine. Now, I'll say this. While people are realizing something profound, you cannot live in harmony with the planet when your spirit or when your spiritual system denies nature. Now, white people are realizing something profound. You cannot live in harmony with the planet when your spiritual system denies nature. African spirituality teaches balance between man and woman, teaches balance between human and animal, between earth and the sky. So the Western world, built on domination, is collapsing under its own balance. It's collapsing under mental illness, loneliness, and depression, and spiritual emptiness, And all of these are the results of cutting off from the ancestral source. That's why all of this is happening. Now, the same world that said black people are cursed are the ones who are begging for black people interventions, are the ones who are begging for black prayers, are the one who are begging for black wisdom, are the one who are begging for black people's healing energy, And that's why you see white people attending African ancestral healing retreats. That's why you see them traveling to West Africa to consult Yoruba priests, okay? That's why they wear beads, they wear anks, they wear African symbols, because deep down, they know the original key to human balance was left in African hands. So the uncomfortable truth is, especially to those who build empires by convincing the world that blackness equals evil, the truth is uncomfortable to them. But spirit doesn't care about propaganda. Spirit remembers. And now the spirit of Africa is rising again through music, through art, through energy. Okay? It is rising in the black youth who are rediscovering their roots. It's rising in the diaspora reconnecting with Africa. It is rising in those who reject the lies of colonization and return to the rhythm of their ancestors. The world is changing, and whether they admit it or not, even white people are feeling the energy. Some are fearing it, some fight it, but the wise ones, the honest ones, are bowing to it. Now, when I talk about white people bowing on African spirituality, or when I talk about African spirituality is very powerful, some will ask, where are the proof? Now, let me talk about the historical proof. And this one they can't erase, because when I talk about Kemet, the first university of the world, before the Oxford and Harvard, before Plato ever sat beneath a fig tree to discover philosophy, there was Kemet. This is ancient Egypt. And every pillar of Western spirituality and philosophy was born in African soil. Okay? So when the Greeks entered Africa, they didn't civilize anything. They studied under African masters. Plato, Pythagoras, and Socrates all learned in Egyptian temples in what they call mystery schools. Okay? Their African priests taught them about the soul immortality, reincarnation, cosmic law, and the balance between masculine and feminine energy. And those teachings later become Western philosophy, but stripped of their African source. They rewrite it. Okay? And that's why Herodias, a Greek himself, called Egypt the gift of the Nile, because he knew civilization itself flowed from black soil to the black spirit. Okay? So when today's world bows at the feet of Greek wisdom, they are unknowingly bowing to African genius. That's about Kemet. Ethiopia is the oldest light of Christianity. Long before Rome accepted Christianity, Ethiopia has already built churches carved in stone. The kingdoms of Aksum recognized Christ, while Europeans were still worshipping all the gods. But even that faith carried African breath. Ethiopian Christianity blended scripture with ancestral respect, fasting with dance, faith with music. Up to this day, pilgrims from Europe travel to the Lalibela to kneel in those sacred temples, bowing on African ground for spiritual renewal. Even the word Ethiopia in ancient Greek meant land of the burnt faces, and they knew where the light was. They knew where the light came from. The Moors, history books rarely mention that For over 700 years, African Moors ruled southern Europe. They brought universities, libraries, and medicine to land that Europe itself called the Dark Age. They introduced algebra, they introduced chemistry, they introduced navigation, architecture, and spiritual science that balanced logic with mysticism, you know. And this one, up to today, still bear Moorish geometry and symbolism that has African footprints in stone, okay? Now, when white scholars study those cathedrals today, they are studying African coded spirituality disguised as European heritage. The same way they now attend yoga retreats without realizing the rhythm comes from African breath. They have been kneeling to African design for centuries, okay? In West Africa, long before colonization, scripture system thrived that knew the universe better than telescope do now. The Dungeon of Mali mapped the star Sirius B thousands of years before modern science discovered it in 1862. The Ifa tradition of the Yoruba carried a divination system more complex than any Western algorithm. Okay? It is mathematics of 256 or do mirrors binary code, the same principle running computers today. So when white scientists build technology based on binary patterns, they are unknowingly channeling an African formula. And that's not coincidence. That is the same spiritual intelligence flowing from African ancestors through modern machines. Okay? Now, but they tried to bury this through enslavement. When our ancestors were enslaved, they carried their gods across oceans, hidden in songs, drums, and names, you know? And on the plantations of the Caribbean and the Americans, enslaved Africans secretly merged their deities with Christian saints. Okay, they matched Ogun with St. George. They matched Yema with the Virgin Mary. And that's how Voodoo, Santeria, and Candomblé were born. African spirituality wearing European mask. Today, those religions are still demonized by Western media, yet thousands of white tourists fly to Haiti and Brazil to witness their ceremonies because they feel the undeniable energy there. Okay? Same when they go there, they sense authenticity, they sense roots, and they sense power, okay? In today's world, we have modern confession, white seekers of black spirit. Go to YouTube, go to TikTok, here on social media, and you'll find thousands of white spiritual influencers teaching energy alignment, ancestral healing, shadow work. Listen carefully. The language, the rhythm, the movement, all echo African traditions. White America are visiting Africa. They are coming to Ghana, they are coming to Benin, just to be initiated in Ifa. British seekers travel to South Africa for Sangoma training. French artists spend months in Senegal just learning drumming. You know? They record documentaries with tears in their eyes saying that I felt something ancient touch me. And that something is African spirit. So it never left, but it simply waited for recognition. So even Western music is built on African spirituality, you know, the spiritual sung by enslaved Africans who accorded prayers to ancestors and freedom. So those chants evolved into blues, which birthed jazz, rock, hip-hop, and soul. Every beat they will dance to is an echo of a drum once burned. Every rhythm, you know, that move European crowds today is a heartbeat from Africa. So when white festivals invite black artists to bring the vibe, they are paying homage, okay? Knowingly or not knowingly or not knowing, but they are paying homage to African spiritual energy. The same happens in fashion, it happens in food, happens in language, you know, from West beat to braids, from shea butter to proverbs. So African expression is everywhere. They cannot deny it. They cannot reject it now. It is becoming a global healing, okay? Now, you know, we are living in a global crisis of meaning, okay? Technology explained knowledge, but killed connection. People are richer yet emptier. So when they look for grounding, they find it in the oldest source, and that is Africa. Because Africa never separated spirit from life. We never divorced the divine from the everyday. Our ceremonies honor ancestors, our food is prayer, our music is medicine. Okay? So that's what the Western world is missing. That's why white people are traveling barefoot to African soil, laying down their crystals and saying, teach us. We want to know what's happening. Okay? So the roles have reversed. Once they claimed to civilize us, now they're coming to study it again. They are coming to as students to study. It's happening quietly in documentaries, retreats, ancestry journeys. They speak of decolonizing spirituality. They realize that domination not just others but themselves. So when they bow before African priests, when they ask black healers for cleansing, they are not just learning, but they are repenting. They are seeking balance with the universe through the people who never lost it. That's all I have for today. If this message hit home, tell me what you think. Until next episode, peace out.